She's I forgot about that one. Like I was in the middle of doing it in Excel, and I just hear 6, 7, and I just like took the green out and just rose up. Huh?
Okay, we'll get started.
I don't know.
You'll let me know.
I'll let you know. I was like, let's do a file. I forgot. Yeah. That's the method. That's the method. And we gotta save that for Saturday. We do my live.
Be there in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody. It's good to see you all. Hope you're doing well. Good. So we're going to jump right into things tonight a little bit. And we're going to cover a little bit of material from last week that we should get to just talk about a little bit. And in relation to the pencil maker's writing instrument assignment and also that topic just in general. So we'll do that, then we'll move on to other material and see where we go tonight. Tonight's chapter and material, chapter I think 4 maybe, start of week 4 for us, is all about consumer and customer analysis. So the chapter, the text, oftentimes when you're dealing with this, and in this case in particular, they spend an enormous effort to talk about market research. Which is fine, but I'd like to talk a little bit more about strategy and some tools that are associated with customers and understanding customers a little bit that I think is a little bit more relevant. So some of the material we'll talk about tonight is definitely an extension from what the text material might be about, but we'll talk about some of that as well. Okay, so jumping back though about pencil makers and writing instruments. By the way, I am a little bit slightly behind in evaluating reflections, so that'll probably be over the weekend. I don't have anything up for you yet for this latest reflection, but it will be coming fairly soon. Bear with me with that a little bit. But the writing instruments. So this idea, this case, this scenario talks about a number of different companies that are involved with writing instruments. Which seems like an interesting product category, or maybe a boring product category if you're talking about pencils and pens, right? And one of the interesting parts about this little article is the approach different companies may have towards viewing the marketplace and the competitive landscape for this relatively benign and boring product category. It's a big product category, as it turns out, but there aren't enormous numbers of players in it. So I think Faber-Castell has something like 65% of the writing instrument market share. So it's a big number. So they would probably be a dominant player in the worldwide market. It is a worldwide market. It's not obviously isolated to specific regions or anything like that. It's ubiquitous, it's invasive, it covers everyone around the world. One of the things that you find in the piece is that there are different growth rates for this product category, pens and pencils, depending on where you are in the world. In underdeveloped economies, the growth rate is higher for pencils, for instance, than it is in more developed economies, which would suggest a varying degree of attractiveness maybe for those markets. But it also is an article and kind of a story about disruptive innovations. So bear with me just a little bit, and you can chime in if you want. If we look at ways that we have, can, or could write or transmit information, like through writing industries. So I'm gonna say the writing instruments. You have to bear with me a little bit. You know, we can think about all the different tools that are available to write, and we're going to get to somewhere while we're doing this. So again, bear with me a little bit. We can be very basic and think about ways we could write. We could use a finger in sand to write a message. We could use a stone tablet, not a digital tablet, a stone tablet. We could use chalk. We could use charcoal, soot, if you wanted to. You could even use tattoo instruments to transfer information. All kinds of things we could use, right? But what we're kind of thinking about are different ways we can write information down. So we talked last week about marketing myopia and being too narrowly focused. I won't guarantee anything. I would suggest strongly that if I asked you to write down the various forms of ways we can write said information, I don't know how many of you would have listed these things, right? I mean, they just don't come to mind as things that we could use. Maybe we don't, but maybe disruptive innovations come along and no longer necessitate these technologies. These are all technologies that were once the state of the art. It's not hard to believe. The tablet chinking off little messages in a stone was once a state-of-the-art tool. Sure, all of these things, quill, and the ink blotter, certainly state-of-the-art at some point, right? Movable printing presses and so on and so forth. Okay, so one of the lessons as we kind of extend from last week is just not to narrowly focus too much on what is, but also think about what could be, perhaps what has been, but expand that, because that is that narrowing of focus that gets a lot of companies in trouble. One of the companies, I can't remember, I think it might have been Bic, one of the company's spokespersons was, in the article, was very firm on, I think, staying in the pencil market because they didn't want to get into digital stuff, digital technologies. And again, you could question that rationale as being too narrowly focused on what they do as opposed to the value they create for the marketplace. Just like the railroad industry or the petroleum industry or Hollywood, right? If the pencil company is convinced that they make pencils and that's their value and that's what they do, then certainly they're subject for competition from any other form of writing instrument that comes along and gets them in trouble, potentially, right? So some lessons that you can just kind of project from the materials that we've been covering that kind of so far. Okay, so to fast forward just a little bit, aside from kind of this, which is fine, we sometimes want to evaluate a industry by its structure. And this is really kind of a product category, market synthesis that actually happens here. So we'll draw out just kind of a little map. When people do these, like what we're going to do here, they sometimes deviate, they change. This is going to be personalized a little bit, depending on how you perceive an industry and how it's structured. But one of the things that we like to do is kind of think about all the different options that are out there to satisfy customers' need. And so we look at the need first, and this would be to transfer information or to write or to put something down on paper. I don't know, I'm not using very good illustrations, but what the customer or the market need is to be able to record information probably in some type of a portable way, right? And that's what these pens and pencils and things like that would accomplish. That's the thing that they would do for the market. So the pencil maker doesn't make pencils, they make the ability for people to record information. That's really what they're doing, what the value they're providing. That's how they should define themselves as opposed to a pencil maker. It's probably the way to think. But we can go through here, and I'm going to just write out a couple things here. I'm going to write handheld types of products versus non-handheld. And I'm just going to put hand, just for brevity, not handheld. We have different things we could do. Sorry. My handwriting does not improve very often. Pencils. And I'm just going to put pens here. There may be other things that I'm probably not thinking of. Maybe markers, or maybe some things like that. Maybe, hey, how are you? Maybe we can use a brush if you're a painter. You can do that. I don't know. You could probably extend this if you brainstorm more. Handheld devices that will satisfy the market need of recording information. Right, that's kind of the way you talk about it. That's the way you think through the process of creating an industry structure. And then non-handheld might be a computer, might be a typewriter, and we might have other things as well. So you kind of see what I'm doing here? I'm laying out solutions that satisfy this need, and starting at a very, very abstract, high perspective, a very high level of abstraction. So we start in a very broad sense first, and then we start narrowing down these things here. Because with pencils, we could say it's a wooden pencil. We could say it's a mechanical pencil, right? We could do deviations like, I don't know, we can make all kinds of deviations here, variations, varieties. We can do big, kind of, remember when, I don't know if y'all did this when you were younger, when you were learning how to write. I may be way old-fashioned, but when I was first learning, like in elementary school, the pencils they gave me, maybe it was me, were really thick. They weren't real thin, they were really thick, and they were, I guess, easier to hold for someone just learning how to grasp a pencil. So, I don't know, maybe the size, the thickness, the dimensions of it, maybe dimensions, maybe the type of material inside. We usually have graphite pencils, maybe
ink.
What's that?
Ink pencil.
Ink?
Yeah. Because
I learned
and
that's not a pen?
I learned the calligraphy, and we use like a wooden pen, like a sharp pin of the pencil, and we dip it in ink.
Okay, so we would probably have to define it a little bit too. So that might be a whole different type over here or something. Yeah. Or maybe it is there. That's an interesting point. That is. There are different. So the graphite comes in different compositions of filler and lead and ingredients to make them softer or more hard. So that's a That's an issue that we might do. And so the point is, though, that we could describe different types of this product and have sort of categories like this. Mechanical, we could do the same type of thing. Maybe it's a plastic single. I'm going to call this single use because you don't put lead back into it. Maybe we have metal ones. Maybe we have ones with reloadable lead or graphite, so on and so forth. Does that make sense? So we're sort of working down as we go, and different types of pens. We have a whole series of categories that are associated with the types of pens we use, type of pen, a marker, a fine point. Again, we have kind of the higher end ones where you replace the ink versus the throwaway ones where once it's done, so on and so forth. Does this kind of make sense? This is sort of so if I'm a product manager, you're a product manager and you're trying to understand your place in the industry, this is a very good exercise to do. I would suggest or promote the idea that if you are going to interview for a company, if you're going to do a job interview, a good exercise is to go find everything out you can about that company and create something like this for their industry and identify where they lie, where they are, and get a scope. It's like a scope of the competitive environment, but it's also just kind of finding yourself, finding where you are, and what you want to do. So we put tablets. Tablet's a handheld thing. Tablet, we might do phones. There's all these things that could be handheld that we could write with, potentially, or write on, or use to record information. Right? You go back to that basic need that's defined the industry structure. Go back to that. Think of all the things. So it's not like we're not limiting ourselves to say we're a pencil maker. We now know, okay, we are a pencil maker. We make wooden pencils, and maybe we make multiple types of wooden pencils. Within one layer down now, we have brands. Brands and companies. And this is where we find our company. This is wherever we are. We're down here. This is where we operate. Does that sound reasonable? Kind of the idea, the concept behind market structure. Okay, and trust me, this is where it is. If I am here and I make this product here, and I don't see the threat of like this space here, then I could be in trouble. Because the people who are using my product to satisfy their need of reporting information might easily find something in this space that does the job better. Or technology disruption comes along and we find something over here that's completely unrelated to pencils that eliminates the need for my product. If that, and this is where that myopia really comes to play in a big, big way. Seeing that bigger picture and understanding where you are relationally with the things that are all around you. The key is defining what this need is and focusing on any product out there that could satisfy that need. As abstract as you think it is, it should probably be identified somewhere in this space. So this is it's not a hard process necessarily, but it's one that actually reveals a lot of information just in general about kind of where you live in your world as a business, as an organization, and all like that. Okay, so the pencil maker thing, it's kind of an interesting topic, or it's kind of an interesting expose on a couple different ideas. I think it's really interesting in terms of the growth rates. Last week we talked a little bit more about the turbulence. You could, if you were inclined to, and again, I haven't had an opportunity to look at your work, so I apologize, but we had that spatial, the space kind of type of exercise where we look at firms' ability to compete in a marketplace, and it was like technically 4 dimensions moving in. It's a weirdly constructed feature because it's not 2-dimensional. It actually has 4 dimensions moving out from an origin in terms of how that model or that tool is used, and you sort of create a diagram like that, and where you kind of decide where you should lie basically in there, and then this competitiveness, the industry growth rates, those types of things go into this, and it really kind of examines the turbulence and the dynamism of a market relative to your ability and your resources and ability to kind of play in that market space. I don't know if you got a chance. We didn't talk about it directly in class. I know there was a video on it, and that spreadsheet's actually, if you want to play with it, handy to play with. I think it's just kind of interesting. If you do the evaluation on those 4 dimensions and then plug in numbers, you can kind of play around with it a little bit and get a feel for where you are, and stuff like that. Okay, do y'all have any questions on kind of pencil's market structure, industry structure? No, not yet. Not yet. We'll get there. All right. Let's shift. Let's just see 1 or 2 more illustrations here. See if I can get this thing going. I'm going to walk through a few of the notes here and there. I know there are a lot of PowerPoint opportunities, so we'll use some of them. We're not going to go through a lot of any one of them, but we'll go through a few, I think, tonight. So this again is another illustration of that market structure concept. This one particularly over time. It's laid out a little bit differently, just in the way it looks, but it's basically the same idea and concept for beverages. So dating back 40 years plus, 60 years plus, 1940s. You kind of think about the beverage space and what was available to consumers kind of in a mass sense, what maybe people used to refresh themselves with soft drinks, coffee, tea, milk, Kool-Aid. And then as we progress through time, additions to the product category or that industry grew, right? Which caused shifts and changes in overall demand for the previously available products. Okay, so soft drinks grew through the 60s relative to others, right? Even though we didn't have another addition to the category, the relative strength of that particular product grew. And again, if we go back to, well, what's the need that's being satisfied? Beverages. Maybe, just, I don't know what else you would say, but beverage you might define a little bit differently. Fast forward another 20 years, and you have the introduction of fruit drinks and sports drinks and mineral water in particular. Gone is the kind of uniqueness of Kool-Aid as a product in the marketplace. Not gone from the shelves, but the uniqueness of it is supplanted by other drinks and powdered beverages and some things like that. Its relevance went away. The relevance and novelty of the product went away with the introduction of other forms of drinks, but also the powdered options out there. Mineral water. Or bottled water started to emerge in the 1980s with a lot of resistance, but bottled fruit drinks, things like that. Fast forward to the 2000s, energy, sports, fruit still there. Bottled mineral water. Just note this: the size of the box, if you will, its relative importance to other drinks. So it disproportionately performed better than others over that period of time in terms of consumption patterns, right? And so this is kind of this illustration, right? Basic illustration of how over time product categories change and shift and move and maneuver. And if we were doing our chart, for each one of those categories, we'd have a list. We'd have things dropping down, and it would grow and it would expand. Just like there was a time when tablets and computers weren't on our industry structure list, and now they are. And right, and there'll be other things after that come. I have no doubt. Okay, so just another illustration of this practice or this thing. So one more. Do another beverage one, only do it down, kind of like what we did. We had a generic need or product class with beverages. We have, and again, these can be designed in lots of different ways. You can categorize these things differently, alcoholic and non-alcoholic. We have a whole variety of different variants that would fall under that particular category. Again, I'm sure I'm missing a few, but this is like an illustration just to kind of drill down. So you start very abstract, very broadly defined beverages. That's the category. And then we start getting more specific, and you can kind of drill down into specific layers. So under soft drinks, we have, again, different variants or variations within that product space. And then we have brands underneath that, typically speaking. And again, if you're Coca-Cola and you're sitting here, if you feel like you're just a cola-producing company, Coca-Cola, then you're kind of missing the big picture, aren't you? If you don't see that there are a whole lot of other options and opportunities out in the marketplace to satisfy one's beverage desire, and you're only selling cola, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. You limit yourself, right? Now, obviously, Coca-Cola doesn't see themselves as a cola-only company. They don't see themselves as a soft drink or soda-only company either, do they? Right? They have products in all types of different beverage spaces. Sports energy drinks, juices, waters. I don't know if Coke has any alcoholic beverages that they do, but I don't know that they have any own
Collaborations? Yeah.
Do they? What?
Collaborations?
Yeah, well, not so much collaborations, but subsidiaries that they own, like they own Minute Maid. They own, what sports drink do they own?
Powerade.
What is it?
I think Powerade.
Powerade, yeah, it is. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But they might, I don't know. They certainly probably do collaborations, like partnerships with another company.
You like Jack Daniels? Yeah. Jack Daniels.
They also have alcoholic Minute Maid.
Do they? Okay, so under the Minute Maid umbrella brand, they push something out. Okay, so again, this is just this illustration that I wanted to share of the product market space and how that works. So bridging off of this a little bit. So this is going to be a little bit of a twist, but it's a strategy thing that's good to talk about here. Is this idea of products and markets. So what I mentioned here is that under each one of these variants, the presumption is that the variant exists because there's a market for it. So there's a market for fruit-flavored sodas. And so you could say this is kind of like a market-driven structured map? Not really, but the reality is that for each one of these variants up here, there are a well-defined group of consumers that has a desire and interest to satisfy their beverage need using that type of product, right? So there's a soda drinking market. There's a coffee and tea drinking market, right? A sports energy drinking market. And the people who are engaged in this are doing it for a specific reason that's different from the people who are doing coffee and tea. They may be the same person, but they're drinking them for different reasons. They're different consumers in those different instances, if that makes sense. So it's okay to be the same person. Or it might be somebody just doesn't drink coffee or tea at all, and they're not in that market, but they do drink energy drinks. Okay, so I don't want to lose sight of the idea that we're just focused on our competition, we're just focused on the product structure only, and that means our firm, what we do relative to our competitors. We also have to marry the idea that for every product space, there's a group of consumers that will want to buy it. So if I am a root beer ginger ale flavored soft drink, I will look and I'll see that my market for this specific product might be pretty small. Like just people who want root beer, or people who want ginger ale, or those specialty flavors might be pretty small. And at the same time, I'm looking over at the cola market and I'm seeing a really big market. Like if I compared the cola drinking market to the root beer drinking market, they're like night and day in size and scope. Would you agree? Would you agree that that's just, it's just much larger? So it might become very attractive for me to get into the cola market. It protects me from a competition standpoint. It broadens my, kind of playability and with competitiveness and stuff, but it also opens up a big line of consumers that I otherwise wouldn't have access to because they might not cross over. Does that make sense? How there's this interplay between the product structure and each associated market that falls under each type of product. So there are people who buy pencils, some people who buy pens, but you're not going to buy a pencil if you don't have a pencil sharpener or don't have access to one. And I don't know, there are various reasons why you might be one or the other. And so there's a group of consumers that can be defined based on the product type itself. And that's one of the things that we can talk about moving forward. So one of the tools, and again, I like to have some tools that help us solve problems, right? So as you move on, do other things, there might be a model or a tool that you find beneficial or helpful, which is super good. One of these is something we call the product market table or product market grid or chart, which we'll look at here in just a second. So this is just a simple chart of products and a chart of markets and the intersect between the two. It can be very, very, very useful if you're designing strategy for growth. It's really a growth strategy tool that's helpful. Okay? So we want to look at the products that we offer and the markets that we serve, and we want to identify opportunities for growth as we move forward. What this model does, what the grid does, is give you an illustration or a picture, a visual of the landscape. So like a perceptual map, like a life cycle chart, like the BCG growth share matrix. These are all visual images that help you better internalize and understand strategy and kind of how you might do something operationally or as a manager. Okay? Ready to take a look at this a little bit more? Product market grid. It's pretty simple and challenging. I do have one illustration, otherwise I've just got boring boxes. The M's represent markets. Now, we would probably call these market segments. So we might say that down the vertical axis here, you might have a market of consumers defined by like that they want to have pencils, or a market that wants to have pens. Or you might define the market geographically. You might have a market of consumers that are in the Asian area of the world, or the Latin America area of the world, which were both highlighted in this article in terms of the growth rates for writing instruments. So you can identify those markets in any way you would identify a market segment. But if they're groups of consumers who have unique and specific needs for the products that you offer. Okay, and again, we'll look at some illustration, or we'll look at an illustration here in a minute that might help as well. The P's are simply products that are offered. These could be products that you offer as a company, or they could be products that are offered across a whole industry. So they could include your competitors' products as well. So this could be a very comprehensive chart. If you looked at your space, you looked at what your competitors offer, what you offer, so kind of list those products, and then what we want to do is list the markets that are served by those products. Okay, so that's the structure. Does it make sense? So far? Okay? All right, here's an illustration. This is old, I get that, but I haven't ever found another illustration that's as good or better. So I'd love to see this actually used more in practice. But let's take a snapshot in time of Reebok and kind of like think of their product array, products they offer, things that they could do. So we look at the top, we have a bunch of products. We have running shoes, aerobic shoes, tennis, basketball, kid shoes, walking shoes, cross trainers, golf shoes, and their brand S. Carter. Now again, this is old, this is pretty kind of dated, but the point is kind of the structure of this chart that I think is relevant. So you can have these products, and there they actually list the years of introduction, so you can see kind of an evolution of growth in products, kind of where these products, when they came out, kind of how quickly they came out, how long there were gaps between when they came out, so you can kind of learn a little bit there. So if you're constructing one of these, especially for your competitors, like let's say we're doing a competitive analysis, we can construct this chart for one of your competitors, and we can go back historically and we can take a look at when they launched products, which products they launched, and by doing that, you learn an enormous amount about their strategy, like what their thinking has been over time and how they approach. So you'll learn a lot about your competitors, doing an exercise like this on them. Now, you may want to do one on your own for yourself too, and that's good. You should do that. But this is particularly helpful if you want to know what your competitors are going to do before they do it, right? Usually people repeat themselves. Usually companies repeat themselves. If something worked before, they're going to do it again, guaranteed, right? So if we track and watch and we do a lot of research to understand what our competitors have done in the past, super, good, that's what we're going to do. Okay, so now, in the vertical axis here, as I mentioned, we have these market segments. So these are defined groups of consumers who are purchasing shoes for a specific reason. Okay, so this makes sense. So these are the market segments we're talking about. We can have a whole list of them. They also sort of do a secondary designation based on whether they're performance-related and non-performance or non-athletic related purposes. Okay, but you can imagine that there's a group of consumers out there who are buying shoes for the purpose of walking. And how do we align our product array, our product selections towards that specific group of consumers? So in this particular case, it's kind of neat the way they've done this. And you can design it however you want. They have a couple shoes that they feel are positioned perfectly for those walkers in that specific market segment. The walking shoe Makes sense, right? And a cross-trainer. Okay, so as I'm developing an appeal, if I'm developing a marketing plan, if I'm looking to position this product in the marketplace towards walkers, I'm going to take those products and I'm going to put those in front of the market segment of walkers and see if I can't push those. Secondarily, we do have other options that walkers may want to use or might be able to benefit from. They might be able to use as a tool to achieve their goal of walking. But they won't be the primary thing that we think the customer is going to go for. Okay, so this is kind of like the strategy, right? This is where the usefulness of the product comes into play. If we have these secondary things, you might get a little bit of cannibalization going on, like we talked about last time. Certainly, we brought these two products out at the same time in 1988, but if I had done one before and one after, I would have been concerned of certainly between product cannibalization. So again, we kind of can play some of these scenarios and think about the effects of adding products or deleting products, but we can also think about, am I appealing enough to enough market segments? Am I trying to reach the right market segments? You could ask yourself, what if a new market segment emerged? How would that look? How would we satisfy that new market segment? I think of, when I do this example, sometimes I think of extreme sports, like extreme sport participants, skateboarders, and I don't know what there are nowadays, but people who do crazy, cool things. What type of shoes would they wear? Do we have a selection of a shoe that we could offer them? That market segment, if we decided to go after it. Because we don't have a product that would appeal to extreme sport enthusiasts, then that probably means we're not trying to target that market segment. It's not a market segment that we should spend a lot of money and effort and energy trying to reach because we don't have a product for them. Right? So if we're kind of thinking strategy-wise and how we're going to deploy our resources, why spend a ton of money on a market segment we can't satisfy? Or maybe we say, hey, that market segment's super profitable, it's growing, and we could make a ton of money. Maybe there's not a lot of competition in it right now, so let's add a product so we can specifically target them and be aggressive in the marketplace. That could be a strategy that we think about as well. Does that make sense? Okay, but this really helps us. This tool helps us see in one picture the landscape. Right? You'll notice that for children, do we address children really well? Maybe not. We have a kid's shoe, but there's only one option that really appeals to that market segment that we offer. Maybe if we want to be a bigger player in the children's market segment, we're probably going to need to address more options for them. Likewise, the golfers. Oh, I have the vendor seekers here. Okay, well, we only have one option for them, so maybe we need to address them better. Right, so golfers. We only have one, we have golf shoes, and maybe that's okay. But maybe we could find other things that would better satisfy them. Maybe we don't need other things. I don't know. I don't know what type of share we have right now with the golf segment. How we're performing. If we're performing well, then we're probably good. If not, we're not. This cross-trainer, you'll notice vertically again, this cross-trainer hits a lot of categories, right? It kind of makes sense. It's kind of the definition of the shoe. The shoe itself is defined as one that can be used with lots of different applications. Should it be the primary shoe for so many product market segments? I don't know. It's like a generic product that satisfies lots of needs, but I don't know if it may not be something that we want to do. I would maybe disagree that the tennis player is going to use a tennis shoe primarily. I don't know that they're going to use a cross trainer primarily. It's probably a secondary product for them. Something along those lines. Okay, so lovely, fantastic tool to see a big picture of a complex concept. And you can start talking through what ifs. What if we do this? What if we do that? How would it look if our product array across the top shrinks or grows. Likewise with our market segment. Luckily and fortunately in marketing, we have a bunch of strategies that are associated with exactly this topic. So if you have principles of marketing, the Ansoff growth matrix is something that you may remember, maybe not by name, but these 4 growth strategies are ones you absolutely need to know. They're essential if you're going to think marketing and you're going to think growth. So we often ask, how are we going to grow? How are we going to increase sales? How are we going to increase profits? How are we going to grow as an organization firm? And in marketing, we like to think of this as a relationship again between products and markets and how those two interface with each other. It's just like very first day when we talked about exchange theory, we had the firm and we had customers. They come together in a marketplace. This is just a continuation of that theme expressed in some strategy. So we have things called what's called market development strategies. Right? There are 4 of these. You guys remember these? I don't know if you remember these. Market development strategy, the Ansoff growth matrix. Okay, so this happens when we add markets. When we go out to find new groups of consumers to buy our products. Right? And this is specifically the idea is to find new market segments. People who have not purchased our product before in groups, like whether it's geographic or some other dimension that we want to measure. That's what it is. So the effect of our chart is that it grows up and down. It expands. Right? We're growing this chart from what was 3 market segments to 5 market segments. Does that make sense? Is it reasonable? Okay, so again, growth strategy 1. Growth strategy 2, a product development strategy. Now, both of these first 2 strategies have risks. You could introduce a product to a new market and that market might reject you. They might not accept you as a brand or a product. You might enter that new market and realize there's way too much competition and we can't break into it. That happens as well. In a product development strategy, we're primarily maintaining our market segment base, but we're adding new options for them to choose from. So we're growing, in this case, from 3 types of products to 5 types of products. We're, in essence, finding ways to better serve our existing customers with products, specifically. And again, there's risk associated with this. We create products, but not all products are successful. Some products fail. They just simply do. So we run the risk that the product won't be accepted by the market, just like if we try to reach a new market, we run the risk that the market won't accept us as a brand or a company. Okay, so going back to this chart here, again, that market growth strategy, we're simply growing new categories of customers to attract. In a product strategy, we're adding products. You know, maybe I add, oh my goodness, I don't know, maybe we add another product over here that's going to be designed to satisfy somebody we already do business with. So maybe it's a new type of extreme sport shoe, and it's going to hit right here, and it's going to satisfy our adventure seekers. And it's going to be, because adventure seekers don't want a cross trainer. Adventure seekers want a shoe just for their adventure. Something specific to rock climbing. I mean, a rock climber is not going to go buy a cross trainer. I don't know, any rock climbers here? I'm not one, but I'm scared of heights. And if I was on a rock, I don't want to crawl. I want a very specific shoe that's going to keep me on the rock, right? So let's put that new product out here, and it's going to be targeted towards adventure seekers, and that's going to be a product growth strategy. We're going to grow sales by introducing that new product, right? So that makes sense? How we use this tool, again, to form strategy. And again, these strategies are old. These strategies were introduced many years ago. So these 4 that we're talking about. Okay, a third one is called a diversification strategy. This strategy is super risky. for a company compared to other growth strategies, because we're not only introducing a new product, we're trying to bring a new product to a new group of consumers who otherwise don't do business with us. Diversification. When we diversify, we're doing lots of new things. The organization is dynamic, we're innovative, we're creative, that's risky, that's challenging. We have to learn how to address new markets in new ways. Maybe we need to reach out to new groups of consumers. Plus, we're doing the R&D and the development of a new product that we've never offered before. Right? So lots of newness, lots of new things we're doing with this type of strategy. But you'll notice that the chart grows in a diagonal fashion. Right? It grows both in horizontally and vertically in a diagonal fashion. Okay. All right. Does anybody remember the fourth growth strategy? There's product development, market development, diversification. What's that? Penetration. Perfect. Fantastic. Penetration. Now.
I have a question for,
of course.
for the product development. Like,
Product development, yeah.
Like, what are the tools? Like, where do you extract data? Like, if you want to do a new product in the market, like you want to create a product from scratch, how do you extract data?
You know what?
You have a research fund, like big companies always have. But
Okay.
for a new startup, where do you start? Like,
So the question is, how do you do research and how do you get data for new products? For new products. Okay. So new product development process is pretty lengthy with a number of different steps involved with it. It's actually a whole separate course for a semester that we don't offer here, but it is. I used to teach it. So there are 3 primary data collection points when you develop a new product. The first one is simply called a concept test. This is actually some material that we could cover here. Let me just pull this up for you since you asked. This is actually a topic for tonight. I wasn't really going to cover it much, but we should. This is a good question. So I don't want to go too. Where's our? I think it's this guy right here. See if I've got it. Maybe I'll have it. Oh no, that's not what I wanted. Sorry, folks. We'll do a concept test. So there are 3 testing phases when we start doing developing a new product. The very first one's called a concept test. It's when so a concept test, we describe a product in its early infancy stages when it's just an idea. So I have an idea for a product. It's a aerosol hand cleanser. It has certain characteristics to it. It may have a scent. It comes in a certain quantity. There's a price associated with it. And this is like early. I just have an idea for a product. Now, I may also, in product development, I may have an idea for 10 products, and I don't know which ones to move forward, right? There's a lot of uncertainty going on here. So what we'll do is we'll talk to consumers who would be in our market segment, who we think would buy this product, and we'll run a survey. And this will be like maybe, 300, 400, 500 respondents. It's not a big sample. It doesn't have to be. Statistically, it does not have to be. And we'll just ask a simple intention to buy question. How interested how interested would you be in buying this product described above or available in your supermarket? Right? And it's as simple as this, getting data like this. Now, there are some things we can get a little bit more complicated if we wanted to, but at the end of the day, the basics are this. We could run multiple tests and change the price. We could do multiple tests and change some of the product features so we could see which ones pop, which ones produce a better result. And that's an early indication of things that we could do to adapt the product to make it better for the market. So there's some things where we can jazz it up a little bit to, get better data probably. But that's the basics of it, of your first one. You also, at the first early stages, want to make sure you understand the size of your market. So what I would do, and the way it's done, is we run something like this. We take the percentages of the top couple boxes. So we've got 41% that would say that they would likely buy this product if we take the top two boxes. 41% is probably too high. It's probably overstated, so we'd probably knock that down a little bit. But we take that percentage and multiply it by our market size to get a very, very early estimate for demand. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
In terms of, so market size times the percentage of people who likely buy will give us a number of people, a number of units we think we might sell. Then we can multiply that number of units we think we might sell by the price to get a very early rough estimate of revenue, first period revenue. Okay?
I got it.
Okay, so the second thing, so product development, second thing that we do when we start getting data and do development with it is some type of prototype testing, where we have examples of the product and we let consumers try it for a period of time. We evaluate that. Again, it's a fairly controlled data collection process. That's the second phase. The third phase is a market test where we take the actual product that's in or near production, and we actually put it in a test space. Like we put it in a geographic region, and we launch the product there for a couple months. We use a market strategy, we use an advertising plan, we use a pricing strategy, we use a distribution strategy in that small region, and we measure the effectiveness of our marketing campaign for that product. Once we're satisfied that our marketing campaign is effective and is hitting the numbers that we need to hit in that little area, then we launch it fully. So there's 3 separate data collections, each of them getting a little bit more focused on actually bringing the product to the market over a period of time. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. So this week's material deals with measurements and how we measure things that are associated with the consumer. And so that's it. Okay, but getting back to this last piece, let's finish this up. So the last strategy, there are 4 Ansoff growth strategies, the last of which is called the penetration strategy, which to us in this chart is boring because the chart doesn't move. A penetration strategy is a growth strategy where we say we're going to improve revenue, we're going to improve sales by selling more product and extracting more revenue from our existing customers with the existing products that we offer. Okay, so it's growth through getting more out of the customers we currently have, encouraging them to buy more product, maybe manipulating our price so they spend more with us. Maybe giving them, again, reasons to purchase more from us. Sometimes we tap into this called consumer surplus. Like the consumer could spend more with us, but they don't. So let's find ways to get them to spend more with us. Let's go to Starbucks and instead of just buying coffee, let's offer scones and muffins and nice sweet treats. So that instead of spending a couple bucks, $2 or $3, whatever, I'll spend $6 or $7, right? So I'm spending more out of my wallet with the stuff that they have there. Okay, so, all right, do y'all have any questions? This is product market grid. This is just a tool. I love this tool. I love this because it leads to strategy. It lets us design a plan to grow. It also integrates this idea of market structure and all of that good stuff.
I want to know where you found a Starbucks where you could get a drink, a scone, and something else for $7.
I was just, I don't know. This was $2.60, so. But it's just coffee with nothing except for coffee. So, anyways, all right, let's move on a little bit. You guys good so far? You gotta see what we can do. As I mentioned, the one of the emphases of this chapter is market research. And I happen to very much enjoy market research. As you may know, I teach market research. So it's something that is near and dear to me. But I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure how relevant going through what the market research process looks like is to an MBA strategy class. This is my opinion. There are a lot of strategy things we can talk about. But doing market research and the market research process and how we gather data is fine, but I like to, I don't know how much strategy. So I forgot I've got to do this on the board. Okay, bear with me. I forgot to clean up my mess. We got a mess up here. There's an argument that I'll never win, ever, in life. And it's that when I think of marketing, and I think of what marketing, what we teach, what marketers do, I argue, and again, I'll never win the argument, that of all the areas of business, we have as many, if not more, metrics and points of data than anybody else. Anybody else. And you're like, no, marketing is math light. Marketing is where you go when you don't want to do math. Is that the sentiment out there? Probably is. It's fair. I mean, I'm not going to, I'll concede, but the number of metrics that we use and have on a daily basis, every decision we make in marketing is driven by at least a handful of metrics that have to be measured, have to be captured, have to be illustrated, put in a chart or whatever. And then the decision's based on that. It's not about how you feel. It's not about whether something looks nice to you. It's not about whether the jingle is jingly. It's not. But it's an argument I will never succeed in. Never. All right, so a little bit about market research, though. Just to kind of be a little helpful. On one side, we know we have the market consumer. The other side, we have the firm. And the simple reality is that people who are in the firm, managers in the firm, often are distanced and not particularly close to their market. So it might be a geographic thing, but it's also an emotional and psychological thing too. You're busy running the business, doing operations, functioning in the organization, and your customers are out there. You know, the people who are closest to your customers are frontline employees, maybe your sales team, because they're interacting with customers on a regular basis. And your marketing team should be fairly close to your customers, but sometimes they're not always. And so one of the things that we use are researchers who act as a bridge or an intermediary. So the research profession is sort of based on this idea that they act or they perform a function of connection between the market and the external components of the organization and the firm and the management of the firm. So all of this to this side, this is all external stuff. Could be things about the market, could be competitors, it could be things that are outside the firm. And so the marketing manager or some manager in the firm has a question and they don't know what the answer is, or they observe something going on and they're not sure why it's happening. Maybe customer satisfaction, as for some reason this quarter dropped. and they're not really sure why. And they can look into the data and they can kind of see that it's happening. They might be able to make some educated guesses, but they're not really sure. So they will enlist the services of a researcher. The researcher may, in fact, work for the company, so it could be an internal employee who's doing this research, or they could employ an outside agency to do this research, which very often happens. It's very typical for that type of a thing to take place. And there's a number of reasons why this works this way and why it's been beneficial to kind of think about it. There's an element of protection that the researcher avails the market. So sometimes, and you may experience this or not, but if the firm asks you questions, if they do a survey, sometimes the market reacts differently, like they don't trust the firm, or they feel like your information is not going to be used well or unethically or something like that. And so the researchers kind of hold themselves to a standard of protecting the market. The other thing is when we collect data on consumers, one of our goals is to, it's not always confidential and it's not always, it's not always confidential, but our goal typically is to strip data from personal identifiers and some things like that. It's a good ethical practice, and researchers do that. So they protect the market to a certain extent. They offer unique skills that are related to research, particularly. So they're professional researchers. These are skill sets that people in the firm may very well not have. They know how to do research, whereas the firm may not have people in their employ that have those resources or those skills to be able to do that type of stuff. They tend to be less biased in their data or in their reporting of it. They don't necessarily have an agenda, in other words. I mean, look, if I want to launch a new product, I've thought about this new great product idea, and I'm collecting the data I'm going to give to my managers, I may be biased. Not saying I would do anything unethical, but I'm going to see the positives a whole lot before I see the negatives, right? So there's a little bit of that going on. They also have and I don't know the right way to write this. I'm going to say they have industry expertise. Now, the way I mean this, though, and that's why I don't know how to say this, the firm is a sample of one. If you work for your company, you know your company really, really well. What you probably don't know really well are all your competitors and how they operate. So you are a sample of one. The researcher who's doing a research project for you, they've probably done 50 of these projects this year. They've seen this problem countless times. You're seeing it once. They're seeing it a lot in your industry. So you may hire a researcher who does research in your product category, who knows your product category far better than even you know your product category because they've got exposure to everybody else. Does that make sense? So they give an external view of the space where you're not able to see that particularly well. So that lens is super powerful. It's super helpful. They will be able to provide you insights and recommendations that maybe other firms are using. Now they're not going to divulge secrets that they can't or something like that, but they see the big picture because it's their job to do this over and over and over and over again. You're doing it once. They've done it 50 times this year. Yeah, they're going to be the pros. They're going to know what to do with this particular problem that we have, right? So this is kind of I think this is a good way to think about the tool of using research. as a process, as a thing. Again, like I say, I teach market research, and the first thing I tell my students day one is like, I'll have a class of 30 or 40 students, and I'll tell them, I'm like, look, maybe one or two of you will be market researchers, but everybody else who's not a market researcher, you're gonna use a market researcher to help you make a decision at some point, right? I mean, and this could be anywhere in the business. I don't have to say market ahead of that. You could be a manager of anything in a business. And at some point, you're going to be making a tough decision, and you're going to hope that you have some data that's been collected, that's valid, that you can base your decision on. Okay, so that's what researchers do. They gather information in a process so that it's valid and that you can make a good, sound decision based on what is revealed. Okay, so the satisfaction problem, we see that there's a problem with our satisfaction. We really don't know what's causing it or what's going on. The researcher's role is to go into the market and identify what might be causing that problem. What is linked to this issue or this challenge here. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a good, I don't think we need to spend a whole chapter of material talking about this. One of the things I've printed out here, I've got a whole directory of marketing metrics that tends to be a work in progress all the time. I have, 110 or so metrics that I've defined and measured, and it's in a thing. These are just a few of them. This week's topic deals with measuring or analyzing consumers. So I just pulled out some of the metrics that we use when we're talking about consumers that are probably the most common. These types of metrics are ones that every firm uses all the time, for the most part. And you might be familiar with some of them, but maybe not all of them. That's fine. Just kind of give you an idea of what some of these guys look like. You've probably heard of different criteria we use to segment markets. These consumer descriptive characteristics tend to be things we use a lot in segmentation, but we can use them in lots of other ways too. But demographics, like we ask our consumers their age and income and employment status and all of those types of things. What types of geographic regions they live in, whether it's rural, the population density in the place they live, for instance, climates, those types of things. Behavioral patterns that consumers engage in. If people drive through the drive-through or they walk in the store. People go sit at Starbucks for an hour or whether they just come and go quickly. Those are all behavioral traits. The psychology behind consumer behavior is a big, big area. We study lots and lots and lots of measures on how people think, how people feel, their emotional states, those types of things. Values and lifestyles. I'm just going to kind of skip down. Satisfaction, customer satisfaction score. It's a big one. We measure that all the time. Customer retention rates. Like, if you're my customer today, will you be my customer tomorrow? What percentage of customers do I lose from period to period? That's a good question. That's something that we look at pretty often. Intention, likelihood to buy. So that concept test we just looked at, that's an intention to buy measure. Measure that all the time. Repeat purchase rates. Okay, so like if you're trying to forecast sales, we want to know how many people buy, but we also want to know the frequency in which they rebuy. It's a multiplier effect, so that we can predict how many units we'll sell from new customers plus repeat purchasers. So we add those together. Usage rates, voice of the customer effort score, willingness to recommend, Mavenism. This is a psychological thing. Okay, so do you know anybody who likes to talk about products and tell you things in advance and ahead of time and stuff like that? I have a brother-in-law who knows a lot about technology, computers, all this, anything like that. So if I wanted to know, like, I was going to buy a camera or I was going to buy something, I would ask him because he has all the information. I don't have to do any research whatsoever. I just ask him, and he will happily tell me everything I need to know about whatever gadget I'm looking at. So he might be what we call a market maven. He has a ton of information, and he likes to give it out, and it's accurate, and I trust it. And so that type of person, right? If you're developing a new product, if you're launching an innovation, wouldn't you love for that person to be on your radar? Like, you would want to purposely give that person a free demonstration of your product so that they had it in their hands so that they could spread the word to everybody else, right? That's a cool type of customer. That's what we'd like to know more about. Cost per customer, customer acquisition costs, customer lifetime value, CLV, we'll try to talk about that a little bit later. So what's the average cost I have per customer to service the customer? How much does it cost me to obtain a new customer? So say I lost a customer, now I have to replace them, so I have to go out and find them and get them, recruit them, bring them in. That's a cost. There's a cost in doing that. It's called customer acquisition cost. A few other ones, just kind of thinking about the brand. These are all perceptual things, though. So how does the customer perceive our product, our brand, our firm, our company? What do they think about us? What are their attitudes? Are they positive? Are they negative? And we talk about something called affect, right? Are they familiar with us? How aware? Brand awareness, product awareness is a big thing we measure. The idea theoretically is you're not going to buy our product if you don't know about it. So step one is you need to know about us. That's awareness. If you don't know about us, you can't buy our product. So that's a big, big push. It's a metric we measure all the time. Okay, price premiums, brand knowledge, brand associations. Brand associations, when I say a brand, like what's the first word you think of? What do you associate with it? How do you feel about that brand?
This was an interesting thing that came up on my Facebook a couple of hours ago.
Oh, sweet.
Denmark's largest construction company, the Churning Group, has reportedly returned its entire fleet of Tesla vehicles due to disagreements with CEO Elon Musk's political views and associations. This decision reflects a growing trend of corporate values influencing brand partnerships. They didn't have any problem with the product.
Yeah.
They had a problem with the CEO.
Yeah, their image, their attitude has changed.
Right.
Something like that.
Interesting.
Something we might measure.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So you get the idea, right? There's all kinds of different things that we measure on a regular basis. And this is just sort of a hodgepodge of items, but these are all things that we would measure pretty regularly as we're kind of doing this process of market research. Okay, good so far? Yeah? All right, cool. All right. Yeah, chapter 4, spend a lot of time on this research stuff. All right, let's get into this customer bit then a little bit more. I'm going to shift gears again. We're going to jump into this. Sorry, just going to organize myself, make sure I'm staying on track. So research-driven, consumer-related things. That's where we are. Okay, so as we think about the customer, to know as much as we can about the customer. And the researcher helps us do that to a good extent. Let's say, though, we shift our thinking a little bit, though, and start asking ourselves, what does it mean to have a relationship with a customer? And what are some of the ways we can either manage that or track that or use that interaction with the customer to lead to some benefits for the company and for our organization. Okay, so even though there's not really another good place in the class as far as our term goes to talk about this, customer consumer analysis seems to be a good place to talk about relationships with customers. And so again, this is one of those topics that I think is important, might not be directly hit on text quite so strongly, but some of it is. So I want to expand on this just a little bit. And just talk about relationships in general. There are all kinds of different relationships that we have when we look to grow an organization and we look at how we do business and some things like that. One of our goals, though, is this idea of consumer retention and keeping customers happy. Often keeping them satisfied will mean that customers will be more loyal. They'll stay with us for a longer period of time. This, in turn, produces greater revenue for the company. It lowers our costs. There are all kinds of good things that can happen. I do want to just kind of emphasize that there are all kinds of relationships that organizations have, not just with customers. We focus on that a lot because it's marketing. But we also talk a lot about customer or relationships with other businesses. When we talk about business-to-business marketing, we talk about how we deal and work with other businesses. When we do channels, when we do logistics, supply chain, those types of things in marketing, it's heavily focused on the relationship that we have with other companies. Okay, so the idea of relationships is actually a reoccurring theme that we have with kind of in what we do and how we go about doing it. With customers, though, we like to quantify it a little bit. Like, we like to know how much in dollars a relationship with the customer is worth. I know that's hard to think about, but it really is kind of an important concept. And it's measurable. It's something that we measure as a result of research that we do. And that's why one of the reasons I want to talk about it a little bit. Okay, but in a broad sense, relational capital is a thing. When we have, the term capital, whether it's political capital, if you're talking about our friends in Washington, if a politician wins by a large margin, we might say they have a lot of political capital and they can do a lot because they have the voice of the public, things like that. Well, relational capital is something too, though, where there's a strength and a bond between multiple parties, and they're able to capitalize on that strength to do good things. At the point in which you have a strong relationship with a customer, they become an advocate for you. They become a spokesperson for you. So do you ever feel so strongly about a product or brand that you're willing to advocate for that product, for that company, for that brand, right? That you stand up for them, that you protect them. I mean, I know there are certain circles where if I say something bad about Taylor Swift, I will get yelled at because her brand advocates, her Swifties, will just step right up and they'll defend her, which is fantastic, right? Isn't that what you want in a brand? Don't you want customers who are willing to, just be so passionate about your interests and what's there? Absolutely. So customer advocacy is kind of this thing that it's a good thing. And strong relationships built upon trust, built upon performance and things like that are good. I do want to note that there are strong relationships that are not necessarily built on these characteristics. We don't really spend a huge amount of time in this class talking about channel conflict. One way you want to manage your suppliers, manage your retailers. Sometimes you want to build a strong relationship through mutual trust. Sometimes you want to strong arm them with a contract. So a little bit of a different thing. Contractual pressure and obligations is a little bit different than this advocacy that we're talking about. But it is worth kind of mentioning just, I guess. Okay, importantly, this idea of relational capital, though, suggests that it's something that is a resource, something that your firm has that can ultimately and someday be leveraged into a competitive advantage. Okay, so companies that do a really good job developing relationships can outperform their peers because they can leverage or take advantage of the relationships that have been formed. So again, if you've got a relationship, Patagonia's customers are passionate about Patagonia. They advocate for Patagonia. They are endeared to that particular brand because of the relationship that's been formed between the company and them. It is a weird thing. I know it's a weird thing, but the research suggests that individuals, people, us, we form personal ties with brands, almost like friendships. Like they're a friend of ours, and we're willing to be friends with them. And just like we talked about with the Purpose and Mission Week, you know, if your brand violates your trust, if they do something that doesn't seem right, you almost take it personally. Some people take it personally because they have this affinity towards. But imagine developing that type of relationship with a customer, that they feel endeared to your brand to the point that they're friends. They've got it's part of them, part of who they are, and so forth. That's really what this advocacy kind of strikes towards, right? So it represents action on behalf of a customer to spread information, could be negative, positive, about the company across their social media, online platforms, and wherever else. It doesn't have to be that. Again, tie into this concept of the market maven I mentioned earlier, and this is a type of expression. This is a type of thing. But again, it's important, critically important that with that type of consumer, these are positive. These are things that you want them to advocate on your behalf. So that will happen. And our goal from a firm's perspective then is to capitalize on that and not only get them to draw more folks into us to advocate for us, but also get them to spend more money with us as well. Increase the firm's share of customers is an interesting concept. So one of the ideas is that if you're a consumer, maybe I've used the grocery store illustration before, where you may shop at 2 or 3 or 4 different grocery stores, and so while you shop at Aldi, just using the example, Aldi, one of the goals Aldi may have is for you to shop more at Aldi and exclude, so it's becoming more of the share of the customer rather than the market share. This kind of this interesting concept. We measure it actually as a metric called share of wallet. So if I have $300, I don't know how much, $500 to spend on groceries, and I spread that $500 across 4 different grocery stores, one store will get a little bit more than another, and maybe at one store, maybe at Aldi I spend $50, maybe at Publix I spend $250, and maybe at a couple others I spend portions of that total $500 budget that I'm going to spend. Well, that's a share of wallet for an individual consumer. Does that make sense? So it's a different way to think about share. You are a portion of that consumer's wallet. Now, how do I become a larger portion of that consumer's wallet? That's one of these things. Grow the relationship grows. They become more invested, they become more involved, they become ultimately advocates for us, and you'll see that share grow. So that's like the share of the customer. It's a really interesting concept that I think places an emphasis on your relationship with them and how that works. So there's a number of different ways and levels and kind of classifications of relationships with customers. There's also a typology of relationships with other businesses too. There are two different lists, but there are 6 items here which I think develop a relationship. The first of which is a fairly passive relationship you might have with a customer, where there's simply awareness. And when you're doing other typologies would call this just simply transactional, where you're maybe having actually initial purchase is transactional, but awareness, you're aware of the product, you know it exists, maybe you haven't purchased yet. Okay, the next step then for us to do is after we know you're aware of the product, we need to engage in at least a transaction, right? Let's get you in the door, let's make an exchange, make that happen. At that point, the brand is part of the consumer's, what we call the evoked set, as opposed to just a selection set. It's part of their lexicon. It's part of their awareness set where they're buying a product from us. Okay, you can kind of see, obviously, that moving from just being aware of a product to purchasing it for the first time is a step up in action, but also a step up in involvement, a step up in engagement, a step up in an opportunity to interact. Right now, this is a big thing, right? Because if the customer has a good experience, they're likely to come back. If they have a bad experience, then they may not. Depending on if the service was bad or the product fails or the environment wasn't great, whatever happens in that exchange experience, really, really critical point. It's like a moment of truth for a company. Absolutely important to be able to move into the next phases of the relationship. All right, so we move on, they have a good experience, we stay connected with them, we walk through a sales process maybe, we continue to create points of contact with the customer, and they buy from us again. And if they do so in a repeated fashion, that's great, right? We get this repeat customer type of thing. So certainly the product satisfies their needs. We've met their expectations for them to come back. We're becoming a routine for them. The sales cycle continues to loop around. Right, so this is a repeated, so we get, again, in other lists, we have a transactional relationship, then we have a repeated transaction. This typically happens over a short period of time, but a period of time. All right, okay, number 3, we move a little further, usually earmarked by the amount of information we share with each other and the amount of time. So if the client and the firm if the customer and the firm start to exchange more information and we get to learn more about each other, that's a good thing. If the repeated purchases continue, then as opposed to a customer, the sentiment is that you've now started to become a client. And it's kind of a terminology thing, but it's also just kind of a feeling that you have, like that person keeps coming in, I know them, they know me, they're a client. No, when we say client, we feel a little bit more invested in that customer. They feel like this is more of a long-term thing. Does that make sense? It's just kind of it's a nuance, but it's just kind of like again, in another list, we sometimes call this a long-term transaction or a long-term customer, somebody who you've known for a while. But again, the level and amount of information you've shared with each other expands. It's like you know a little bit more about the person as you move forward. Okay, number 5 in particular, what we want to do is start integrating the customer with a network of customers. Okay, so it might be that the customer's been coming in, buying for a few times, they've started to develop a pattern that's predictable, and they start to integrate that information with others. We sometimes call this a brand community. That's kind of a formal term. But when there's a group of consumers who all have sort of this growing affinity towards a product, that's called a brand community. They interact together. So independent of the company, you've got consumers doing peer-to-peer interactions. Does that make sense? So this is like a level of depth that you don't get right away. Okay, some of it, and I don't always use sports analogies, but this one works particularly well. If you're a fan of a particular sports team, then you might very likely follow that sports team's blogs and information. You might talk to other fans that are also fans of that sports team. Does that make sense? You've joined a community of fans, a community that all have something in common. One thing, their affinity towards a brand, whatever that team is. Okay, so when you join that community, it's a level of depth that you've developed with that brand. Now you start to have some emotional ties to the brand. You start feeling for the brand. You start seeing others who feel for the brand. And in a group, you can share victories and you can share sadness and defeats, right? Commiserate with each other when your team doesn't do so well, right? Doesn't that, it's like, yeah, but then collectively as a group, you can have hope. Because there's always another game, there's always another season, there's always a new coach, there's always new play, whatever it is, you can rally around each other, and that's this emotional tie, buy-in that you've got. Now, in association with the brand, but the brand doesn't even have to be involved because the community is self-generated and it's developed itself and it's interactive. That's this community part, which is kind of a great little thing. Marketers love this. Marketers love this. And one reason why is because it's self-perpetuating. We have to relinquish a little control. So the community can't be controlled by the brand. The firm can't control the community. The community has to generate itself. Does that make sense? So in other words, we, as the brand, we can't tell the community how to feel or whatever. We can feed them information, maybe manage that a little bit, but the community is self-sustaining. It has to be. But if they love your brand that much, if they love the brand so much that they're going out on a Sunday afternoon and all gathering together at a watering hole, all dressed out in that gear, cheering, man, that's love. Is that love? That's brand love right there. And I mean, that's why marketers just kind of are fascinated with that level of commitment. Okay, the last one we deal with, it mentions, circle back around to this advocacy concept, where there's lots and lots of loyalty. We have something called a brand champion. Brand champions, again, are folks who will advocate for the brand, talk about the brand, sell the brand basically on your behalf, be positive about the brand, and those type of things. It becomes for the consumer an iconic figure, a model or a hallmark that they would like to esteem in terms of when they're advocating for it. It's part of their life. And that's kind of an important concept that we eventually want to get to with the customer. Now, this is hard in some product categories. There are lots of product categories we don't really care what the product brand is. We just want whatever. I mean, how attached are you to gas stations, to Shell, to Exxon, to Marathon? I mean, how attached are we to that product category? Probably not very, right? It's a really hard product category too. So it's a commodity type of a thing. Commodities are hard to, do this with sometimes.
Well, I disagree.
Okay.
I drink a lot of coffee and I don't spend a lot like at Starbucks, so I like Circle K coffee, so I will always get my gas at Circle K.
Well, there you go.
And you can bring in your cup and get a refill for $1.09 in whatever size refill you bring in.
Can you really?
Yeah.
There you go. There's advocacy for you. You are spreading good words.
I love Circle K.
All right, so this is kind of the process. This is kind of where, and a big question is, where do you go from next? How would you manage a customer beyond this? And this pushes some of the envelope. I'm really excited about this idea of a synthetic customer. And there's actually the reflection for this week deals with synthetic, what we call a synthetic customer. So imagine where we have enough information about a customer to do some super great predictive analytics where we know and can feel what they're going to do next, what they want next, and we can go ahead and craft personalized, customized value propositions to them, right? So instead of, we go from mass marketing where everybody gets the same thing all the way down to mass customization where every individual consumer gets a unique product that's catered to them based on their buying history, based on the data and the information that we have using some predictive analytics. That's really kind of the next stage or next place to go, where we know them and they know us so well, we were able to push products that they want before they even want them, or know that they want them, which is kind of interesting. It's an interesting idea in space. And just a little preview. One of the ways AI is being used, but then also big data, because of the data volumes that we have, is to develop and create groups of consumers called synthetic customers. I don't know if anybody's familiar with a synthetic customer, but basically a customer we generate who reflects actual customers. So we're creating customers, customer profiles and behavioral patterns based on lots and lots and lots and lots of data and AI. We're letting AI create customer groups for us. And what's fascinating about this is that we can create customer groups and we can predict how customers will behave without actually going out and talking to customers. We can create synthetic customers who act and behave and think just like a regular customer would. So we can try different marketing strategy, we can try different prices, we can try different advertising schemes, we can try different product variations on synthetic customers and we can run thousands of different variations and tests in a very, very efficient and cost-saving manner. And it's getting really, 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 really good at doing this. It's just the cusp is like literally just when you look at synthetic customers and the creation of basically, fictitious customers, right, using lots of data. We were only a few years into it, or literally only a few years into it. It's not anything you're ever going to see in a textbook. But it's something that lots of companies are starting to invest heavily in, engage in, and use as a form of market research. So again, the chapter deals with market research, consumer analysis in general. The next step that we are entering in and are already emerging into is the development of research applications on customers we create, customers we let the computer create for us. Isn't that crazy? We can do that? No, it is. It is. So imagine, I don't know that we do this. Again, I hate to always use sports analogies. Imagine if we create a synthetic opponent. with all the characteristics of a real opponent in a sports venue. I'm just thinking this through. Never thought about this before. What if we create a synthetic opponent and we ran a bunch of plays against our synthetic opponent and we observed what they did? I'll bet you that's what ESPN is doing right now. Guarantee you they are. Guarantee you they are. Something. That would be really interesting. Think about the competitive analysis, though, that we can do. If we can create synthetic customers, we can create synthetic competitors. And we can do lots and lots of game theory experiments with that, right? Can predict what our competitors will do if we raise our price. Predict what our competitors do if we offer the market a new product option. That'd be really cool too, actually. But this week, again, it asked me to look at a couple articles, a couple new things relating to the topic of synthetic customers. And so whether that's good, whether that's bad, where you might see some issues or problems with it, or advantages as well. Okay? All right, so any questions so far? Are we doing okay? We're doing good so far? We're still kind of in the mix here, right? I know we've been going for a while. Kind of like to finish up a little bit here and maybe take a break in a little bit. Yeah, bless you. Trying to decide what we should tackle. I'll tell you what. Why don't we take a little break, just because I want to do a little on customer lifetime value, but let's take a little break, like maybe a 5 or 10 minute break. It's 7:45, so maybe 5 till 8. Take a little break, take a little decompress for a second or two. We'll come back. We'll do customer relationship management, touch, CLV, and we'll talk about customer procurement, because you guys read about that. Yes, it's similar to.
We might just finish it. I don't know if anyone else will join us or.
Minutes of the game.
She's a funny.
You have the rest of it, just relax.
Those are longer though in content. There's 5 questions for each, and you want to spend a good amount of time, and they really deal with the content. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Just Tuesday.
What one time?
We have a cookout too.
Food good there?
At the cookout? I don't know.
No, we're making it.
Oh, we're taking our own.
Oh,
Not
I'm using the boy.
our own.
Oh.
You had cookout.
No, we might go Saturday, I guess. If we're feeling it after.
Saturday.
We're probably gonna go. I don't know if we're gonna go to the game or not. We'll probably go out.
Grass, it's dark.
That's hype. It's gonna be wild. No, probably not. I had like 5 drinks last week. I was way too much.
That's it.
That's enough for a month.
That's good for a month for you. You better show.
I know.
You don't want to get bubble gum.
I can get my keys.
I'll be 60.
Yeah. I feel like I am. Just about for bedtime.
He said he just hated
I've heard that too. The same.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't go until you check out. It was good.
Until last night.
That's what I do.
Thank you. I think that it made a hamburger about me.
What time is your appointment tonight? How's life?
It's cold.
Do you work all 5 days for Monica?
I usually don't work on Friday, but I only worked for a little bit today. Because I can only work 20 hours, technically.
Oh,
I only get paid for 20 hours.
you only get paid for 20. Whether she works you 40 or 20. Did you like the other kind? It's better than the,
A lot better.
aren't they great?
Yeah.
Yeah. I hated it. Your first experience was terrible.
All right, most everybody with us? Okay. All right, we're going to get into the customer pyramid idea here in just a few minutes. You had an opportunity to read that article, right? Everybody, kind of lead customers, iron, gold, platinum, those guys, all those, kind of an interesting take. So let's talk a little bit about customer relationship management then, to kind of kick things off as we get going here. Talking a lot about this process of relationships with the customer and how to develop those and how this can be a data-driven process, or at least a research-based process. And I know that sounds weird to say you're forming a relationship based on data. It's kind of what we're going to do, though, as it turns out. So CRM is a snapshot. Our goals with customer relationship management. So CRM is a process. It's a process. It is also a hardware, software type of system, and it also involves a heavy people-focused thing that we do. So this is, when we do customer relationship management, it's not a siloed, isolated process typically. It's one that involves a lot of data and a lot of parts of the company, usually. And it's a system, it's a structure that's usually developed. Our goals, though, are to identify good customers. And, you're going to say, well, aren't all customers good customers? I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, if somebody's spending money with you, that's usually a good thing, right? But some customers are better than others for various reasons. And so we want to identify who those good customers are. We also, though, in a process, want to best understand how much value we need to deliver to customers. And again, I know that sounds kind of weird. I mean, we got a product and we got a service. Some people want more. Some people want more service. They want more from their product. Some people require less. And so being able to deviate our commitment and kind of what we offer people based on those need requirements is an important thing. And third here, we want to develop a relationship, right? That is engaging, moves people along through those relationship stages all the way up through advocacy if possible, right? CRM programs are typically focused on gathering information about our customers and being able to use the data to adapt our offer or adapt what we deliver to the product in an appropriate way. So again, one of the concepts here is we don't necessarily want to over-deliver too much. I know over-delivering sounds good for the customer. Like, customers want over-delivery. Customers want more than they expect. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. But if we are always over-delivering, then that pushes our costs up as a company. It's expensive to over-deliver, and it's silly to over-deliver if you don't have to. Don't over-deliver a customer if the customer's requirements are already being met. No need to do that. You're just adding costs to your expenses, right? So this kind of helps us, this process, ideally in the ideal world, helps us identify, kind of ways to deliver customized value propositions. And it also helps us identify who those most valuable customers are. One of the key components here is we focus a lot on customers who are loyal based on probably satisfaction in the past, and ultimately their retention. Right? That helps us out. It also helps us on other metrics, market share, sales, those types of things as well. All right, so again, this is kind of like a process rather than an individual strategy. It's not like we don't do CRM as a strategy. We do CRM as a part of an operational process of doing business. That's why it's kind of thought of as like an organizational kind of component holistically, but it's geared on understanding data-driven processes for customer management, and that's where it kind of falls in there. Okay, our goal is to sustain long-term customer relationships. Understanding that relationships are twofold. They're for the customer and they're for the firm. So it's not just us using a process to make money. It's for us to develop a relationship which will make us money, is basically one of the ideas here. So CRM delivers profits to the firm. This is important to realize and to think about that not all customers are equally profitable. Some are more profitable than others. If, for instance, you have a customer who takes a lot of your time, has a lot of issues, has a lot of problems, has a lot of returns, they might buy a lot of stuff from us, but they're also costing us a lot in terms of servicing them. They might not be a particularly profitable customer. And so you may ask the question, how much do I really want that customer? We're making money off them, but we're not making a lot. And there are other customers out there who are a lot more profitable for us. They buy products that have greater profit margin, they don't give us much hassle.
But there's another aspect to that. I worked for a chiropractor for a year, and we had a small firm, one doctor, patients, and even he had one patient. She was so friggin' annoying, and she was so gloom and doom, and she never had a good word to say. And by the time she left, the doctor would go, "Do something that she stops coming here." So even though profit-wise, every patient paid the same, draining your energy.
Excellent illustration. Absolutely.
Is horrifying.
Yeah. They divert your mental energy, all the stuff that you're doing. So ultimately it helps us identify needs so that the firm doesn't overperform. But we also, by doing so, it's not like we're trying to cheat the customer. We're not trying to underserve them ever. We're not suggesting that. But rather, we're trying to meet their value needs where they are. If a customer values delivery speed and they're willing to sacrifice price, then let's push delivery speed, right? We're providing that value to them because that's where their value is. And if we can identify that that's the need that they have, and we can customize our value proposition to include speedy delivery, then fantastic. The customer gets better value out of it. So value is achieved when the customer gets and pays what they want, ultimately. Not more, not less. Satisfaction is expressed by the degree in which the product matches the customer needs from the firm. And all those needs may vary from customer to customer a little bit. They may be nuanced. So if we have a data process where we can identify what those are, and we can deliver those in a mass customization manner, then we're really, really doing well. That's a really effective process for us to kind of maneuver through and go through as well. Okay, so CRM, managing relationships with customers. As I mentioned earlier, this idea of relational capital can be used as an advantage. It's like a resource that the firm could have, and it could help leverage into very positive things. So certainly as we develop a relationship that's strengthened through the process of a CRM program, we're going to be delivering better personalized product options to the customer and have better personalized contact points with the customer, and they'll appreciate that. will achieve greater customer satisfaction and ultimately more money from the customer as well. Customer will feel a greater sense of trustworthiness and reliability with us. They'll have better experiences that way, builds loyalty among customers as well. We're able to form greater connections, moving towards advocacy, right? Again, progressing, if you think about progressing the customer through those stages of relationship, beyond awareness, initial purchase, beyond repeat purchases, all the way up to advocacy, these types of appeals that we're able to develop for them absolutely help. And finally, our operational, from an operational sense, how we view our operations can be focused on, positioned towards, having an orientation towards customer. And so CRM programs, again, are oftentimes viewed as holistic within the organization, within the firm itself. And as such, if a lot of people are working on that aspect, towards the customer, it tends to focus operations towards the customer's point of view. Right, so a customer orientation sometimes goes strongly with firms that effectively use CRM. If your firm is highly production oriented, then you might not have a CRM program. If your firm is highly R&D oriented, you might not have a strong CRM program. If your company is highly market oriented, then you probably will have a CRM program that's effective. They kind of go that way. Okay, so it's kind of the idea of what customer relationship management is sort of about. We're talking about lots of software, data structure that allows us to do a lot of data mining. Nowadays, we're going to use AI to capture this. CRM programs will help us develop those synthetic customers. I was talking about earlier. That's one of the outcomes that it'll start to do if it's not doing it already. It'll help use the data the customers have to be able to predict exactly what they're going to want in the future, and then we'll be nimble enough to deliver the value that they ultimately want. Okay, just broadly speaking, the CRM programs, when they're in place, typically act company-wide, but they're also a beneficiary. Is the marketing function itself, and then within the customer as well. They're kind of there, taking on what needs to be taken on. As I mentioned, this outcome tends to be for delivering what the customer needs specifically and ideally, what they require, not more, not less. It will gauge the degree to which we're achieving that. So again, if the customer's expectations are here and we're over-delivering, a CRM program should be able to capture that over-delivery. Or if we're under-delivering, we should be able to capture that as well. And I don't know which is the worst error. Probably under-delivering, because you'll lose a customer if you under-deliver too much. If you under-deliver, then they're not going to be satisfied with your outcome. If you over-deliver, they're going to be over-satisfied, which is great. You'll retain them, but you'll lose some profit margin. But being able to measure that distance or that gap is something that's there. So there's actually, I won't go into it too much. There's a methodology called gap analysis where we measure expectations and delivery, and we measure the difference between that gap. And then we quantify how much that gap is costing us, either in lost sales or in overruns. So that's something that this process absolutely helps us do. And which brings us up to the idea of our customer. There's customer. Where am I? customer lifetime value and the customer pyramid. Okay, so when we're talking about the customer pyramid, do you agree that there are lead customers? What is a lead customer? What's that?
An unprofitable
An unprofitable customer. Okay, so when we talk about unprofitable, so somebody comes in your store and is a customer, that means they're spending money with you. What makes them unprofitable?
I think it depends on like the industry.
Okay.
Like if I'm Coca-Cola, like I can't really think of a scenario where there's like an unprofitable customer because like they're just going up to the vending machine and
Sure.
you're collecting a small margin on that profit from the vending machine because they bought a Coke.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're putting that product in that vending machine regardless. So I don't know.
Okay, maybe not Coke, but are there other scenarios where the customer costs you money?
Wealth management, like
Okay.
wealth management field. So like if someone's assets, like if their assets are bringing to the table, you're collecting your 1% off of that, and they're constantly contacting you and
Okay.
wanting to talk to their CFP
Good.
a lot, and you're like, the time and effort that I'm putting into this client is not worth,
1%,
1%.
whatever your fee is.
Yeah.
Perfect example. Good. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, I mean, marketing costs money. So if you spend X amount of dollars to get this customer into your store, your marketing campaign, your social media posts, and they only buy, a sticker on the way out, probably not a profitable customer.
Great example. Great example. So one of the things that we talked about are acquisition costs. The cost to bring a customer into your store. You brought them into the store. If the conversion rate or the amount of money that they spend doesn't cover that cost, not profitable.
Yeah, I think also in sales representatives spend a lot of time talking to customers, explaining the whole thing, the whole deal, and then at the end of the tour, they don't end up money. They're like, oh, I'll come back to you and we never do. So it's like you just spend a whole tour. Like people who are
It could be a
sitting
B2B thing, or it could be a business consumer thing where you're doing personal one-to-one sales, spending a lot of one-to-one sales is very expensive. I mean, on a cost per unit basis. So, you have to reach a certain number of people to, or to make it work. But you're right, that those that say no are costing you. But the ones who say yes are customers, the ones who say no aren't quite yet. Right? So there are certain examples for sure where customers cost you money. The question is, what do you do with those customers? What do you want to do with those customers? How do you view them in terms of work? So, yeah.
I do have an example, like if we see from the material perspective, we have platinum that goes to the luxury or the loyal customers, and then gold, then come to the silver, and then lead. So lead is the one that's going to cost you more when you are going to manufacture the sort of a jewelry. Mm-hmm. And it is the same when we see if we take a subscription of any software, there comes a premium version, there comes a plus, and the basic version. Yeah. And how the companies manage the basic version is like they charge from the premium version, and that's how they manage their expenses, like not really focusing on what the basic customers are paying them.
Okay, so there is a strategy that you might consider where internally you may justify keeping some lead customers, although they're not ideal. The idea is that you have platinum customers who are paying a fairly significant profit margin, and so you're using their profits to basically underwrite the money that you're losing from your lead customers, if I understand correctly, which would be the basic subscribers. Yeah. So basic subscribers in a software environment might not be making you any money. Mm. So, but the idea though is, what do you want to do with those basic subscribers? You want to eventually probably move them up to another level.
Yeah, but the thing is that the basic subscriber also, something that comes to the customer, like a value of the customer, like they have sort of 500 customer instead of losing those 1,000 basic customers, so they will just have 4,000 platinum or the premium customers.
Yeah.
So they just accommodate those 1,000 customers just to make their company valuable, like when it comes to the customer relationship.
Okay, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so there may be other, so by keeping your bad customers, you give the impression or the illusion that you're more valuable as a company. Okay, I can see that. Here's the deal. If they're not profitable, if you're the chiropractor and you've got that one patient who keeps coming in, giving you problems, then your life might be a whole lot better if they just find a new chiropractor.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm not saying that that's an exclusive rule, but if you got a bad customer, wouldn't it be great if that bad customer visited your competition? I mean, I'd rather them go down the road than bother somebody else. Maybe, and I know I'm being a little harsh, be silly with it a little bit. But we do need to think about that. So how do you identify a bad customer? And how do you know when a bad customer is a bad customer? You've got thousands and thousands of customers coming in. Some are better than others. So what makes one better than another? Yeah.
If they're unpredictable.
Okay. You're unsure of how they're going to react every time?
Yeah, like if their purchasing decisions are just erratic, like you're not really sure what you're going to get.
So we do love it when we do some type of a strategy and people act consistently. But if we do a strategy and we start seeing people act erratically based on that strategy, that does raise red flags for sure.
I'm thinking of like car sales, like when someone's wasting your time. Like imagine talking to someone for 6 hours and then at the end of it they're just like, all right, yeah, I'll think about it. And then they go away and you never hear from them again. It's like you just spent 6 hours of your time when someone else could have walked through the building and you could have helped them.
And wouldn't it be great to identify that person within 5 minutes so that you can get yourself out of that situation and move on to another customer? Right?
Yeah.
I mean that's kind of the idea. If you can identify who that customer is earlier, then you can reduce some of the costs that you might incur by them, by servicing that customer and then ultimately under purchasing.
So I work at the call center at the Carolina Opry now, and part-time because I'm retired. But our boss wants us to be 4 minutes. 4 minutes for a call to buy tickets to a show. Put the ring on their finger. That's what he keeps saying, put the ring on their finger. So I talked to this guy a couple of weeks ago. For probably 10 minutes, he asked about this show and that show and these seats and that seats. And then I said, and I'm trying to hurry because they record every call. So I'm trying to hurry him up. And then I say, okay, so are we all set with these tickets? And he goes, yeah. I said, what card will you be using? It is a phone call, right? He said, well, I'm going to pay cash.
When I get there.
I'm going to pay cash. How did he expect to get the cash to me over the phone? And that was an 11-minute phone call.
And you could have been on the phone with 2 other customers.
That we're going to spend $600.
Right.
Yeah.
And also too, like how they treat your staff, if you have like a restaurant or something, how they treat your wait staff or your hostess, whatever.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. I need to make sure. I guess we are going to go into this. This is not what I was expecting. So if they, restaurants are great examples because of table turnover. If they're sitting around using up spots, or if they divert a lot of the server's energy, if they're asking for, this isn't cooked quite right, or whatever, or, I wanted this or that.
Even just other places though, if they're just like mean to your people, some people might not want to work there and then you have to go find new employees because they don't like dealing with whoever customer that keeps coming in.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. No, you're right. This is kind of like a chiropractor customer. It's just a drag that they keep coming in. Yeah, so lead customers, platinum customers, gold tiered customers, those types of folks. All in the mix, there. I went in opposite order. I started with lead. Those are these guys down here. The iron is the middle. These guys are profitable. They kind of need to be encouraged. Coupons, sales, bring them into the store and they will buy. Lead customers will also have other options in their selection set. You will be one of many. You will not be the only person that bless you. They're not going to be super, super loyal necessarily unless there's a deal involved. So they're price-sensitive customers. You can imagine that these customers will cost you some money because you have to make offers. They have to lower your price or give them discounts, which again eats into your profit margin whenever they buy a product from you. One of the realities, though, is that iron customers tend to make up a large proportion of your overall customer base. So like 70-80% of your customers might be lead customers. So it's like you can't ignore them. You can't avoid them. You have to attract them because they get your volumes up. They act as a volume booster oftentimes, which is absolutely one of the things that you need. Okay, and then we have our other two. I kind of went in reverse order than the slides were showing. Platinum and gold. So they're both interesting in and of themselves. Certainly you don't have a lot of platinum customers as a percentage of your total portfolio of customers. So we talked about products as portfolios. You can also talk as customers as portfolios as well, where you have a collection of different customers that yield different values to you. Platinum customers are going to be the most, okay, so they spend a lot. They don't have a lot of other companies in there or other options in their selection set. They will go to you first. They're very loyal, and you don't have to necessarily spend a lot of money on them. So in other words, with that type of customer, it's kind of counterintuitive. You don't have to offer them lots of discounts. They already like your product. They already are loyal. They're already willing to buy, right? So it's not like I have to entice them into the store to buy our product by a discount, right? I can hold my margins pretty well with them as long as I take care of them. I have to, reach out to them. I have to personalize things for them. Yeah.
So would you say you invest more resources into a platinum customer or like an iron customer?
Different types of resources. It's like an emotional, it's like the idea that relationally, you're really far with them. So they're the advocacy stage of a relationship with you. So you've invested a lot of time and effort in kind of this emotional, capital, I guess, or resource with them. So there's that type of what you have to spend with them. But you're not discounting the product for them. You're not giving them, the reason why they're buying isn't because of a transactional thing. It's they love you. They've been seeing you a lot. You care for them. You know what I'm saying? So it's a different type of cost that it's also far more enduring. Like you can screw up, you can make a mistake with a platinum customer, and they're going to come back. Just apologize, say I screwed up, and they're going to love you more every time. They absolutely will. Just like any relationship. If you're in a relationship and you screw up, you say, I screwed up, I'm sorry, and that other person will embrace you more, hopefully, right? Absolutely the way it is. One of the things we can look at is like some of the strategies, though, that we want to kind of continue to do. Grow customers. Transition them from one level to the next. So part of our CRM program is identifying profitable customers, identifying who they are, where they are, kind of earmarking kind of what level they're at in terms of if you're going to use a typology like the pyramid, which is kind of a neat idea, but being proactive in moving them from one level to the next. So if somebody's a lead customer and you want to keep them, then, or keep working with them, you have to find ways for them to cost you less money. And I don't know what all those are, but it's kind of like this strategy or management style of being able to push people along. Just like you're pushing them along in that relationship stage, from awareness to purchase to repeated purchase and so on. So just like we're trying to progress through that relationship, we're trying to push people to get them to be more profitable and less costly as we go through this. So absolutely, relationships grow. Your goal should be to develop stronger relationships and move customers up. You want to absolutely protect your gold and platinum customers relative to your competition, right? We want to make sure that they do not defect. We know that iron customers are going to be likely to shop with other companies. That's a reality that we're just going to have to accept, that they will not be as loyal, that we have the deal this week so they shop with us. The other store has a deal next week so they'll shop with them. However, your gold and your platinum customers, you need to protect. They're the ones that, sports analogy, if you're the fan of one team, you can't be the fan of their rival. You just can't do it. You gotta be their fan, right? You can't go back and forth. What do you think about a sports fan that changes from season to season who their favorite team is? It just doesn't work, does it? It's just like, what do you think? Like last year you were a Cowboys fan and you're a Redskins fan. You like the Eagles just because they won the Super Bowl? I thought you were a Cowboys fan. You can't, they're mutually exclusive. You can't be both, ever. One or the other. It's the way it is, right? Okay. Number 3, lose non-profitable lead customers. Okay, so churn rate is the percentage of customers who leave from period to period. So how many customers do not repeat purchase? How many customers leave? What matters is how many people leave, what percentage of customers leave you from period to period. But equally important is who is leaving you from period to period. This is like critically important. Like you may have a churn rate of 5%, so 95% repeat purchase rate, 5% churn rate, 5% of your customers leave. But if the 5% are all platinums, you're in trouble. I don't care. You're doing something drastically wrong if your good customers are leaving you. If that 5% is primarily made up of lead customers, then okay, no problem. I mean, you're right. You're not feeling bad. In fact, maybe your churn rate should be a little higher because you can get rid of more lead customers. Maybe your churn rate goes to 10% and you're losing more lead customers. I don't know that that's a bad thing. I mean, it's, emotionally, maybe, the customer's not always right. The customer's not always profitable. So, consider total revenue, sales volume, not just margin, of course.
That's an interesting thing what you just said, that the customer's not always right. 40 years ago, the customer was always right, regardless of what happened. And that, over the decades, nobody here can relate to decades of living, but that has been a real paradigm shift in thinking.
I think so. Yeah, I think,
Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that customers have been, so there's been this dynamic that firms had a lot of power in the relationship in the marketplace. And at some point, there's this thing called an invisible hand. Adam Smith wrote about it in 1776, Wealth of Nations. If you're bored some night, you want to read it. The invisible hand in the market. And the invisible hands kind of makes the market move. And it's really the customer voice kind of dictates in a market-based economy what happens. So there's like a lot of power that the customer has, but the firms haven't allowed that for a long time. And then there's the shift where the market is becoming more powerful with additional access to information. We as consumers have far more power than we've ever had before, because before there's this thing called information asymmetry. Firms have had a lot of information that customers didn't have. Today, customers have a lot more, bless you, a lot more information that they never had in the past. Mm-hmm. And so, but it cuts both ways. You know, if you're gonna unveil profit margins, if you're gonna go into a car dealership and know exactly how much margin the dealership has on a product, then the dealership's gonna be a lot more careful about who they're selling to and how they're selling. It's gonna be a lot more. It's like the grown-ups table. It's more serious. So I don't know. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, just because you're buying a product from me, there are a whole lot of other customers potentially out there. So anyways, okay. Yeah, you got to be careful about volume on this too. You can't just exclusively focus on your best customers. I know you like all good customers, and you probably want to avoid, but you make a great point that sometimes you might want to keep your lead customers because maybe it shows a more robust portfolio. You know, if you lose your lead customers and that's a third of your business, you're all of a sudden a third smaller in the eyes of your investors, right? There's kind of a bigger picture sometimes, especially with those iron customers. Remember, the iron customers may not be enormously profitable, but if they make up 80% of your sales, total sales, or your transactions, well, you can't live without them. You have to, right? I mean, you have to take care of those. You have to satisfy them. So you'll have to do whatever you need to do to make sure that they stay in the fold, so to speak. Right? Okay. Number 5, be sure to focus on the unique tiers needs for each. So this is like a different strategy for each of this. So if you think about market segmentation, what if we segmented our market by profitability? And we looked at consumers and we took a slice of our consumers based on how profitable they are. We regrouped our consumers by that. And then we deliver to our consumers what they kind of elements that are unique to their tier. You know, specifically for iron tier customers, for instance, we know that they are very, very, very price sensitive. We wanted to maintain them, attract them, then we're going to have to do those types of activities. They need promotions and incentives. They will cost us money. They will probably cost us profit. But if we want to, you know, maintain those iron, that big bulk, that big volume of customers, we're going to have to focus on them. The other end of the spectrum are platinum customers. They need they need the personalized attention. So it's a different type of cost, but it's not transactional. It's not in a sale. It's not a gimmick to get you in the door. It's a personal call. It's a personal welcome when they walk into your store. It's when they walk into the store, you already know what they want, so you have their products already arranged for them. That's how you cater to them. And that's an interesting way to think about things as well. Just kind of delivering value that way. Understand these relationships and deliver just what's needed for each type of customer. Remember, at the end of the day, over-delivering costs money and is often not necessary. But under-delivering can be bad as well because you could lose a customer. And CRM programs, understanding the relationship of the consumers all help us do that. So this customer pyramid piece, great illustration of relationships with customers, how it translates into profit, how it translates into better operational type of things as well. All right, so this coming week, synthetic customers, got some good, interesting readings, I think. Got CRM, again, when you read the textbook. So I, again, made a copy of some of the chapter excerpts and posted them on Moodle. So any progress on the book? I mean, I haven't heard anything, but the textbook, they never tell me anything. I get no news, so I get news from you. So if any of you start getting the textbook, let me know. Maybe I'll reach out to them, push them a little bit. They like to hear from me, so I'll try to see if I can find out some information for you. I hope that's working out for you well enough.
You're a platinum customer at the
What's that? No, to them, I'm a lead customer. I'm causing them grief. I'm giving them problems that they have to deal with. This textbook, they did a new edition. It's sold in the UK, and they're not supposed to distribute it here in the US, so they're having trouble getting it. But they promised me they would. So, all right. Do y'all have any questions? You guys did great. I know you're kind of plodding through this material. I hope it's interesting. I hope you find some value in it. Let me know if there are any problems, and otherwise, have a great week, great weekend. Thanks a lot.